Good morning, everyone. I'm coming to you live from the Embassy Suites in Denton, Texas this morning. So a little bit of change of scenery for me and my background for you. We're going to start talking about circulation workflows. I'm sure since we didn't have office hours last week, I know that there are probably still questions that came up from the policies that we went through the two previous sessions, but we will have office hours this Thursday so we can address any of those questions as well as any workflow questions that we may encounter as we go through today's session. So today is the start of one of 3 workflow sessions for circulation, ending up with us talking about integration with circulation and WorldShare ILL. So I do not have slides for these sessions. This is all demo. I'm going to go into the system and walk you through it and walk through all the workflows that I can think of. We'll break it up into a couple different pieces. Today, we're primarily going to look at managing the patron account, checking things in and out, and managing things on their account. And I will be pointing out some important information to keep in mind as far as ongoing troubleshooting. We'll readdress those later on in office hours in June as you get closer to go live, but just to kind of point them out here. Also to note that I will be posting, probably not today, but maybe later this week, some test patrons and test items that you can use in my test environment and tasks that folks can do. So these workflows that I'm going to go through, I do have a spreadsheet that lists out, check out a book, check in a book. So things for folks to do in that test environment with those practice credentials that you've been provided. Those are all in Basecamp. So if you don't remember where they're at, just go in and look in your docs and the important information document that's posted to the docs and files, and each of you have your own individual credentials for accessing the test environment. One more thing before we dive in. Again, thank you for everyone for being flexible last week. I appreciate it. I really didn't give you much of a choice, but I couldn't talk, so we couldn't have had our one-on-one sessions anyway. I would have just been making crazy faces at you and hand gestures, and nobody needs that on a Wednesday or a Thursday. So we'll go ahead and dive into our demo for today. And if you have any issues with sound, let me know. I think we're okay though. All right, you should see the login screen for my test environment into the Muncie Library. When you log in with your credentials, you'll log in the Community and Guest Researchers link, and then you'll enter in the username and password that I've provided to each of you in Basecamp. I've logged in and I'm logging in into my test environment. We're going to go into circulation. But one thing I want to note is when you log in for the first time, or you log in into an incognito window, or you've cleared browser history and you're relogging in, it will prompt you to select the branch you're working in. So if you have multiple branches that are circulation points that people will be working out of, they'll select the appropriate branch for that circulation. If you need to switch between branches, if you click up here at the top in the right corner by your name, you'll be able to see the branch listed. So I'm logged into my Kent Memorial Library branch, but I can click on it and switch between any of the branches that are listed. And it will just switch me over. That way, if I'm doing any circulation tasks, it will be associated with that branch. If I check anything in from another branch, it will then issue a routing slip for me to transfer that item to its owning location. If you've done that, unintentionally, just switch the branch, check the item back in, and it will be at its home location. But we'll take a look at that. When I go into the circulation module, I have my accordions over here on the left-hand side for navigational purposes. It automatically will open up and default to the Assist Patrons. This is where I will do any check-in or check-out of items or manage anything on a patron's account. We have our check-in section where we will be able to manage any check-ins or holds. We can search for items in the Discover Item section. We do also have the ability to do label printing from circulation. We are not going to go over that during circulation workflows. Those workflows for label printing are consistent throughout the acquisitions and metadata modules, and so we'll cover that in another module. We have a report section which handles our hold reports. So all of these are pull or clear the hold shelf or holds for reviews for us to take a look at. These are the only live reports in WMS. All the other reports update overnight. We have a room scheduling feature. This is not turned on automatically. This is something you can choose to turn on. We'll cover it in one of our other workflow sessions for circulation, but it is an option. You won't see it now when you log into yours because it's something that I have to actively turn on, and we only turn it on by request. And then last, you'll see the scheduled jobs. And this is that bill pay portion that has been added to your subscription. And we'll take a look at that in a future session as well. But we're going to start by taking a look at our Assist Patrons area. We can enter a barcode by either typing it in or scanning it in to pull up a patron account, or we can search for the patron. It will default to the keyword search for name or the index for name, but we do have the ability to search by barcode or email address or one of the other indexes that are listed. This name ID email option will search multiple data point fields, so you can, put whatever you'd like in there and search for it. Name will search for a patron first name, last name, first name, last name, comma, first name. So however you type that patron's name in, it should pull those results back. So in this case, I'm looking for Snow White. And when I type her name in, I get my account that I'm looking for. Now, if for some reason I needed to create a new patron, I have a community user that has come in and wants to use the library, I can hit create new patron and it will give me a pop-up to fill in patron information. What's important to note here is that if you do end up using a third-party authentication, this only allows the patron to circulate. It will not allow them to access the single sign-in or sign in through easy proxy, depending upon how you have your proxy set up. So if this is just for community users, great. If you're adding a patron and their account's going to get updated later, also great. But keep in mind that just creating a student account in here may not give them full access that they need. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Snow White's account, and we're going to go into her account information. Now, when I access Snow White's account, I can see her name listed here at the top. And then next to it in parentheses will be her barcode. Now, for my test environment, my patrons have a kind of a username as a barcode. That's acceptable for your community users. For your institution patrons, I would expect to see a series of numbers, which would equate to either their faculty, staff, or student ID. It could be a mix of letters and numbers, whatever works as a barcode, but it does have to be unique to each user. Then as I look down, I see the tabs that I can navigate to access different areas of Snow White's account. And then open by default will be this section for an account overview. This allows me to identify her patron type, the branch she's assigned to, her expiration date, and the last activity that she had on her account. It also gives me kind of a bird's eye view of what's going on on her account. She has a couple items checked out, one of which is overdue. She has some fines. She doesn't have any holds currently, but she does have some notes. Now, as we look at ongoing use of the accounts and you're thinking about troubleshooting, if for some reason an item does not check out the way you expect it to, some things in this account overview can be reviewed to help you update the information or to make sure that those things are circulating correctly. So if something doesn't circulate as we expect for a student, verify the patron type. Some of your patrons may kind of cross the boundary between two types of patron type. They may also be faculty, but also be enrolled as a student. So if you're expecting them to have faculty privileges, their account may have been loaded as a student account. So just be aware of that. Each patron can only have one account. If you have certain policies restricting holds or checkouts for branch purposes, you'll want to check that as well. I think the big one is the expiration date. So if for some reason you can't check anything out, or it's truncating the expiration date or truncating the due date, it could be because the expiration date. Just some things to be aware of. I also see that I have some patron notes that show on her account. These will append as they're added. So I see the most recent one listed here, but if I expand this, I can see that in 2021, she had a dispute over a fine. In 2023, in February of 2023, she signed the laptop agreement. And then we also in 2023 decided we would take apple pies in lieu of fines being paid. So I can see those listed here. Now, as I scroll down, I can see what's checked out on her account and then actually check out additional items to her. I see she currently has 2 items checked out. One item that came from the new bookshelf that is due on the 28th. So due later this week. And then she has an item that's overdue that was due on the 14th. That is an ILL request. Now, depending upon my policies, I may or may not be able to check anything else out to her. But if I am going to circulate to Snow White, all I need to do is either scan or type in the barcode for the item that she's wanting to circulate. Oops, I typed in the wrong number. My apologies. If I just hit enter or go, it's going to check the item out using the policies in place. Now, because she has some issues with her account, she's expanded the outstanding fine limit, and then there are also some notes related to the item. I get a pop-up. Excuse me. So here, because I have admin roles assigned to my account, I can override these notices or blocks in this case. One is a block and one is just a notice. This one just says that she's exceeded her fine limit, so I can either choose to acknowledge and continue checking the item out or cancel it and not check the item out to her and then manage her fines. And this other is a staff note associated with the item. Here there is an upcoming display about cooking, so we'd want to be able to hand that book over to Dawn for that display. Now, if I do not have admin credentials, I'll be prompted to put in a username and password for the override. We saw this on the policies last week in the admin general section. You'll need to set up override credentials in order for students or other staff that do not have high-level roles to be able to override if needed, or you can go in and override for them if they're logged into WMS. Now, I'm going to acknowledge this and go ahead and check the item out to her. And it will apply the policy that's appropriate for the item. So here we're checking out cooking for a crowd. We can see the barcode, which would then link us to the details of the item. If we click on the hyperlink for the title, it takes us to the title level instead of the item level. I can see what shelving location it lives on, checkout and due date, the applied loan policy, and then I can see renewals. Now I can expand or restrict the amount of columns I see here. So I may not care about the call number. I may just want to see shelving location because that helps me identify how policies are assigned. I can come up here and either reset the columns to default, or select which columns I would like to see. So maybe I want to turn off call number, and that will adjust my view. This is restricted to your individual login. So for my login, anytime I log in, these are the columns that I'll see. If I reset or clear my browser history, I will need to reset those, but it's set for your individual login. This isn't an institution setting. This is an individual login setting preference. Now, I also have the ability to adjust a due date. So if I want to give Snow White additional time with an item, or I would like to restrict it because it's the end of the semester, I can set a due date. So I can come in here and I can say, well, I want to have everything back before spring break. So I'm going to adjust this to March 7th. I can adjust the time if necessary, but click OK. If I just click out, it will reset it back to whatever it, well, no, it doesn't do that anymore. That's great. Okay, so if you click on it, it will set that due date. It will keep the due date, adjusted due date, until I clear it out. So I can come in here and check out additional items to her with this adjusted due date. Now for this particular item, the due date is shorter than what I'm going to give her, so that by policy, it is defined that it is a shorter due date. This might be a reserve item that I have only on reserve for 2 hours for circulation, but I'm giving her extended time. And I can acknowledge that. If it was a shorter time period, I wouldn't get this pop-up, but anytime that something exceeds a policy, I do get a pop-up that lets me know that this goes beyond what the policy would allow. So this is a 2-hour reserve item that we've checked out on an extended time period. And I can continue checking items out with this adjusted due date. And clear it as needed. Now, as I look down below, I can see the material format of the item. I have a little icon that I can hover over and see what the item is. These are all just happen to be books. The title, which will again take me into the title level. So if I own multiple copies, I will see them listed here. If I own multiples at branches, I will see them listed. The barcode that takes me into the item details, so I can see the LHR. And then the shelving location is listed. Now, if I scroll down below, I'll see some additional action buttons that will allow me to do additional actions on this item or on a particular item. Now, you'll see that they're grayed out and I get my Ghostbuster symbol when I hover over them. This just means that I haven't selected anything above to take action against. So if I would like to renew an item, so we have our overdue item, I can select it and I can either just renew it based off of policy, or I can renew it with an adjusted due date. Now, because she has exceeded another policy, I get that pop-up letting me know, and I can either acknowledge it, use my override credentials, or tell her, I'm sorry, we can't do that at this time. But if I acknowledge it, I can now renew that item, and so her due date has been extended. I can also change a due date. So if for some reason she comes to me and says, I won't be able to return this on the 25th because I won't be around, can I turn it in on the 27th? I can select this item and change the due date for her. So I can either come in and type in the change or hit the calendar symbol at the end to adjust it and choose the due date. Now, again, this is past what the circulation policy has in place, but she's asked and we're going to allow her to do that and we'll acknowledge it and make that change. And so now we see that it's adjusted to the 27th instead of the 25th. We also have a change status option. And what's important to note is that in WMS, changes in statuses are currently manual actions. So if an item is missing or lost, that is something that is triggered by staff. The system doesn't automatically make something lost or missing. So if she comes to me and says, I have looked everywhere for Over the Rainbow, I cannot find this particular title, I can come in and change the status of it. This allows me to use any of those claims. And we saw this at the patron type policy. So claimed returned, claim never had, claim lost. Claimed returned will prompt me to put in a date she thinks she returned it. This would then assign any fees and fines that would be appropriate. If I set it to claim never had, it's going to change the status to claim never had, which is essentially missing, and remove it from her account. If I select claimed lost, this will make the item missing in the system, but also charge her for the replacement cost of the item. So if I hit change status of item, it now removes it from her account. We'll see her $6 in fines have now gone up a bit. And the status of that item, so if we go find the item real quick, it was, oops, sorry, I hit the wrong button. This particular item, it has now changed that status to lost and it's no longer checked out. In discovery, this item will show as not available. It won't show a lost status, but it will show it as not available. So when you look at analytics, and we look at analytics in May in our session then, anything that's lost, claim lost, or marked as missing, we'll be able to pull that information up on the same report. Now, if I went to look for this item on the shelf and I couldn't find it, I do have a report missing button. So I would be able to search for the item in the system and report it missing, and then it will change the status. Anytime I find or one of these items is returned, I check it in and it will update the status. If the item is still charged to the patron's account, it will remove the charge based off of how you've set your policies. So now you'll see if I take a look in her account overview, she has one claimed lost item, and then this will continue to update. So if you limit the number of claims a patron can have on their account, once she's hit 2 claimed lost, if your policy is 2, and she tries to do it a third, then there will be additional notices and pop-ups saying that she's already hit her limit for claims. So this initial screen is for checking items out. We see some account overview information, but it does allow us to take a look at what's going on with a patron account. Now, the other option in this action area is to print or email out the list of items that are currently checked on a patron's account. So I can either check one or check them all and hit this email option, which would then send another due date receipt. That's the only information it will provide when I click that option. I can either email it or print it to my network computer, but it will list out the items she has checked out and when they're due back to the library. The content of the due date receipts can be updated as part of the policy and service config. If there's information that you would like to include that's not here on this particular receipt. Now, another thing that's available on this initial patron account is the ability to contact the patron directly. We do have the ability to send miscellaneous emails, and you will see this like ad hoc email. It just populates the email address on the patron account. You can put in your reply to email address. It will provide your address from your account from signing in for WMS. And then you can type whatever subject and message you'd like to send to her. Maybe letting her know she forgot something in the library or following up on a reference question or comment that came in. You also will see in mine that I have an account overview. This takes additional configuration that we'll talk about in a future session, but this allows me to set up the ability to email an account overview, and I can select what information is available in that overview. I can include my logo, a reply to email address, and then details about the student account. So I can create multiple types of account overviews. I can do one for staff, one for faculty, and it's applied based off of the patron type. So for the student account one, you'll see it shows the items that are currently checked out, any bills. So this section goes about bills. And then I have some information about contacting the library, as well as a student account specific note about tutors in the library, and a link to Discovery. These account overviews are very configuration heavy, and it's a brand new feature. So again, we'll walk through this either in office hours or in a future session, but you will not see this by default because it's something you have to set up. Just check and see. Okay, we don't have any questions in chat. Just making sure we're good. The next tab on the patrons account will be for holds. This allows us to place or manage any existing holds. So here we can place a hold and we'll get a pop-up. We can choose to do either a title or an item level hold. Title level will give me a search box for title, which will allow me to search the catalog. Item level hold allows me to either search by bib information, OCLC number, or barcode. We're going to stick with a title level hold search. You'll see that the patron information is populated because I'm doing this hold request from the patron account. I don't have to search for the patron or supply that information. The system automatically will provide it. Now, if I go to make a hold from an item, which we'll see either later on today or next week, it will do the opposite. It will populate the item, and then I have to search for the patron. So let's search for cooking with apples and pears. It will give me a pop-up for my search results. I can kind of narrow it down if I need to. It is going to search to just my library holdings, not libraries worldwide. And then I would be able to choose the appropriate item. I have 4 results based off of the search that I performed, and I'm looking for this one here by Laura Washburn. You'll see it'll populate the title, and then I can fill out the rest of the place hold request. I have the ability to fulfill it from a certain location. So if I own this item in multiple locations or multiple branches, I can choose which one to fulfill it from. Otherwise, it will go to whichever location it's available at, or it will default to the pickup location. You'll see here I am logged into the Kent Memorial Library, so it defaults for that, but I will be able to choose between my other branches if she says she wants to pick it up at the library or at the main library, at the Muncie Library. But you'll also see my other branches listed. She does not have the ability as a student to pick this item up at these other locations. So you'll see not available due to policy. As we talked about with our policies, you may want to create specific pickup locations for technology or for reserves, and then have a general hold pickup location that's a little more open for other items. So if you have like a laptop agreement that has to be signed and you want to make sure they're picking up at the circ desk versus a hold shelf, you can apply that based off of patron type. We can also apply it based off of location. From here, then I can see what pickup locations are applied based off of this branch. So for the Kemp Library, if she's going to pick it up there, she can either do hold or curbside pickup. I don't need her to pick this particular item up at the circ desk, and she's not faculty, so office delivery isn't available. I can adjust the hold time. So if she says, if I don't have it by next Tuesday, I won't need it for my project, I can put an end time in here. Otherwise, it will just go for the policy that I've put in place for how long I want an active hold to stay on an account. In this case, I could say that if I haven't filled it in a week, she doesn't want it. Otherwise, I think my policy is like 30 days. The hold would stay active. We're going to delete that out. I also have the suspension, or what I call the vacation hold. So if she comes to me and says, okay, well, I put this on hold, but I'm going to go on a trip for spring break. So if it becomes available next week, I don't want to lose out on it. So from the 3rd to the 7th, she's going to be out of town. It would then keep the hold active for her, and she'll stay on the hold list. And that way, then it will be filled afterwards. I also, as staff, have the ability to move patrons to the top of the queue. So if a faculty member comes in and they need something right away, I can mark it and move them to the top of the request queue. If I've turned on public notes, I can put a public note that would attach to the account. They'll be able to see it in Discovery. They aren't super easy to see or find, but I can include those notes. And then I can add staff notes that are not visible to patrons. Once I've filled out all the needed information, I can hit place hold. Yes, I know, she's got bills. We'll get there in a second. And I can see that this hold is pending. She's in the queue. She's one of one. No one else has got a hold on this particular item. And the policy for fulfillment has it to fill until the 18th. So if we don't fill it by the 18th, it will cancel and she'll get a notification. Now, if this item is available, my report for hold pickup will update in real time. So I'll be able to see this if I'm checking the report throughout the day, and I can fulfill that hold for her pretty quickly. I can always adjust a hold if I come in and I can edit it. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. My apologies. I can always come in and edit the hold by hitting the actions at the end, either by deleting it or making any edits to it, which means maybe I want to change the pickup location or adjust the hold lifetime or adjust the suspension period. Whatever I need to do, I can do that. Now, once it has been filled and it's waiting to pick up, then I won't be able to make any adjustments to the hold request. Or I can delete the hold entirely, but we'll leave it there. We'll need it for next time. This next tab is for schedules. This is important that you have policies configured for these if you choose to use the scheduling feature. What this does is allows you to create a schedule in the future for an item. So if I'm searching for an item, tablet went to sleep. So if I am looking for an item, I can indicate a schedule from when and when that she wants to have this particular item. If she doesn't need it today, but she needs it sometime in the future, I can schedule it. Now, what this will do is it will keep anyone from having it checked out during that time period. So if someone else comes to check it out, it will adjust the due date for them to be back before this May 5th date so that we can make the item available to Snow White. So it will truncate their due date. Now, keep in mind, this does require those policies to be configured. So if you're not going to use schedules, you won't need to use a policy or have a policy, but make sure that your folks know that we aren't using this as an option. Because the tab does show up regardless of if you're having that policy or not. So this just schedules something out into the future for use. The next tab is for claims. We saw this before when we claimed this item as lost, but those will be listed here. Anything that's attached to her account. Once the item has been returned, then this will be removed from her claims. And it's hyperlinked on her checkout page. So in the account overview, I can click on the one claim and go right into the claim tab. Our next tab then is for bills. This will charge any bills to her account. So anything that is overdue or charged by policy, so overdues or missing items or anything like that. I must not have a policy for that particular item that I marked as missing, so it didn't show up here. But you can see that I've got some overdue or items that were charged based off of policy, and then a damaged item that was charged manually. So I can create manual bills. So as you're filling out your circulation spreadsheet, keep in mind that you may have bills that are charged that you personally charge to an account. May it be for a damaged item or for printing costs if you're not using any sort of other printing management software, or a variety of reasons you might charge something to a patron account. We want to include those as bill reasons as well. So we can create a bill and we'll see we can attach it to a specific item, or we can leave that blank, but we do need to include a reason why we're charging the fine, whether it's for a damaged item, maybe it's a library membership, maybe supplies, printing fees, whatever it is that would be considered a manual charge, we can put that on here. Charge the end. And create our bill. So now it adds that $10. And because it's not something I attached an item to or based off of policy, I don't have anything for the description or the barcode area. Now, if I do click into the notes, I'll be able to see there is a note added that it was charged for headphones. So including that information will be important. Now, if I take a look here at her account, I can see that she has been charged for a few things. And we'll see that she has her current charges of $128.50. Now, the reason that went up when we were in our checkout, we had it at $6, is because she had yet to be charged for this missing item. If there were additional accruing charges on her account, they would be listed here. So if she had anything that was checked out to her that was considered overdue, and she had accruing fines, those would be listed here, and then there would be a current outstanding balance. But what I see here for this current charges and on this checkout tab here will include everything that's actually been charged to our account. So any accruing fines hasn't been added to the total at this point when we see it here. So that's why we saw the $6 before. Now I can select to pay one or all of these bills. So if I come in and I select maybe 2 items to pay, I can resolve those bills. I have the option to pay, waive, or cancel. So I can pay a portion or pay all of it. I can waive a portion of it, or I can cancel out the bill entirely. So we'll go ahead and pay this. She can pay $116. And then part of your policies, you're setting your payment methods. So if you're taking cash, credit, checks, or you're sending it to student accounts, however you want to take payment for those items, they would be indicated here. This will appear on your fiscal transaction reports on how you're taking that payment method. You may have some non-traditional options as well. It's pretty early and I haven't had breakfast yet, so cookies sound pretty good. I can add some notes. And choose to either email or print or not print a receipt. I hit resolve and it has now accepted that payment of $116. And I can send the receipt or close out. It removes those items from the current account bill charges. It will adjust the current charges as needed. And it will move those paid items down below. So we'll see here's that searching for Pemberley and that charge for green. Our next tab is for suspensions. For our suspensions, again, this also requires a policy to be put in place. It's not pretty typical for US libraries. It's something that's used more by European libraries, whereas instead of charging for replacements or charging a fee or a fine, we suspend the account for a period of time. So essentially just put your users in timeout. Next, we'll see the profile tab. Depending upon the roles assigned to your account will depend upon how much information that you can see here. As an admin, I can see everything. I can see her name, her birthday, her address, all kinds of that personal information. Whereas if it were a student worker, I wouldn't see all of this information. I can restrict what they see. If I scroll down, I'll see the notes. So if I need to add an additional note or I need to adjust a note that's already existing, I can do that. I can hit edit and I can add a new staff note. We'll see a new blank one has been added down here and I can continue to hit add and add additional notes. Now I can make a pop-up note appear on a patron account as well. So I can add that note and hit save. Now, every time that I go into our account until I resolve that note will include the pop-up. So I get a pop-up, maybe. I think things are going a little slow with the update for some reason. Did I not hit save? Save, save. Okay, let's make sure you hit save. There it is. Here's my pop-up. Now, every time I go into our account, that pop-up's going to be there until I either remove the exclamation point or delete the note out entirely. So I can close, make sure that I give her back her basket, and then come in and adjust the note as needed. So I can either choose to delete the note out entirely, which is the one underneath, or I can just remove the exclamation point and add and save. That way, if she is a habitual basket of apples leave her behind her, I will be able to track that information. I can also see my custom data fields. So if I've included those as well, I would be able to see that information. So if you're using the custom data, those will be listed and can be adjusted as needed. You can create headers and drop downs. This happens in the configuration. So you may want to track this by department, by student classification, faculty classification, or other. For me, this is just so I can keep track of who's creating what accounts. Then the last two tabs are optional for you to have turned on. All the rest of these will show up. Transactions and notifications will only show up if you've turned on history. So the first one is for transaction history. This allows us to track what transactions are being taken on a patron account. So we can see the claim loss, the change due date, the renewals, the checkouts, the check-ins, and how those are taking place. So if they are staff actions, or if they are policy related actions or system related actions. You may have auto renew turned on, so it would be a system based off of policy action. Here I uploaded some based off of using our offline circulation client, so that will indicate that here per policy. You can retain this information either for a period of time or forever or not at all. If you have it for a period of time, it's kind of a rolling calendar, so those things will fall off as needed. Same with notifications. Notifications can be kept up to 24 months. So this will tell you what notification was sent for what particular items. So she had some holds that were on hold, but they expired, and she received a notification and what email address they were sent to. This is kind of nice because it does allow you to keep track. If a student says, oh, I didn't get an email about that overdue item, you can verify their email address and say, yeah, we did send that notification out on the 23rd. But again, these are optional pieces of information to retain.
Just as a quick question,
Yeah.
if we put in both a school email and a Gmail personal email, can the emails go out to both? Because we have
Right now, no, they only go out to the primary email address on their account.
Okay.
Question. So the last thing I want to go over today is the check-in tab, and we'll return to this when we talk about holds next week. But our check-in tab is basically checking in our items. So if I enter in my barcode, I have my pop-up note that's coming from the item itself, so I can acknowledge that and hand it over to Dawn for the display, but it will check the item in. This item belongs at my Muncie library. I'm logged in at my Kemp library, so I do have a routing receipt that pops up. I can print it, stick it in the book, put it in the box for it to be routed to the next location. If it lives at this location, it will then just say, ready to be shelved, or if it's fulfilling a hold, I would get that notice too. You'll see here the settings for check-in. It will default to automatic, so that's just your regular check-in mode, checking items in. We have our non-loan return or soft loans, so items used in the library but not circulated. So end of the hour cleanup of tables, you find a bunch of stuff for things that you have on a cleanup cart. You can check those in as non-loan returns to track in-house use statistics. I can change this to inventory mode. So if I'm going to pull a bunch of items off of a shelf and bring it back to the desk to check in for inventory, I can do that. Or if I'm deleting a hold, and we'll look at that more in depth next week when we look at our reports. But if we're removing a hold from an item because it's canceled, they didn't get it picked up, I would switch to that mode. If for some reason you're in the wrong mode, the system will tell you, like, it doesn't know what you want it to do. You'll get a pop-up that lets you know that. I can backdate the return. So if you're closed over the holiday weekend and you come in on Tuesday to clean up You have a Dropbox for check-ins or returns. You can adjust and backdate it so you're not charging fees and fines over the weekend if you were closed for whatever reason. Now you'll see these printer sections. By default, it will be set to do not print. I recommend that you switch these to print, especially for hold. For those of you with multiple locations that you're shipping things between locations, you would want to turn the network printer on as well. If you're going to be using the group circ function and items are going from location to location, you'll want the routing slip on. You can also turn on the network printer for ILL shipping slips. And you can have it print for loan return confirmation or have it sent as an email to your users instead. If for some reason it doesn't print, I can come in here and select this and reprint it and select it. So I can redo that routing slip. That's a newer feature as well, which is really great. Before we didn't have this, and it was you were out of luck if you didn't get printed. It was a little tough to get them to print. But now I can come below. If I didn't have my network printer turned on for whatever reason, I can select the appropriate item and print the appropriate slip. It will tell me which one, could be included. So check in, check out. That's just the basics of checking in and checking out. So we'll take a look at the patron account as well as checking items in and checking items out. Now, next week, we'll move on to our additional sections. I know my folks that are visiting from the FDIC that are looking in, there are some big changes that happened here over the weekend. Those of you that have been kind of testing and playing around, you may have seen those changes as well. So we'll take a deeper look at those next week. If I do a search for apples, this screen is completely different than it was as of Sunday. So that change happened over the weekend. Some updates, more modernized view to go in line with what we have been seeing on the patron accounts. So very exciting stuff, folks. But we'll dive into that next week. Now, while I may not get super quick in adding of patrons and items that you can practice with in my test environment, please feel free. You have the credentials that you can go in and poke around and play a little and practice. Please, please, please do not delete anything that's in there. If you create it, fine, delete it. But if there's a patron that exists or an item that exists already in the system, please don't delete it. I will try and get that loaded to Basecamp today, those test ones. There's been a lot that happened in my test environment over the last year, so I've had to spend a lot of months cleaning it up. So I'm making sure that those items all still exist. But I do have transaction options for folks to take, some of which we've covered today, some of which we'll cover in the next 2 weeks. But for today, that's all I wanted to cover. It's just some basic entry into the circulation module, basic workflows, checking items in, checking items out, dealing with holds and fees and fines. And then next week, we'll go into searching for items, creating temporary records, and working more in the system, dealing with holds. Then the third week, we're going to talk about my favorite thing, which is the Digby app. I'm super excited to share that with you and talk about integration with circulation and interlibrary loan. So exciting stuff. But we'll be back here together on Thursday for office hours. You'll get to see this lovely background, my happy wet bar again before I fly home to Columbus on Thursday.
I have a quick question, Beth. You just mentioned interlibrary loan. I wanted to make sure in the circulation policies that we're setting up, do we need to be having a patron type for interlibrary loan, notifications for interlibrary loan, loan rules for interlibrary loan?
You do not need a patron type for interlibrary loan.
Okay.
You just need to make sure that whether it's your staff or faculty patron type policy, that it's not restrictive in any way. So if your staff and faculty patron types don't have any limits on them, you can use that. If they do have limits, then you will need to have a separate ILL that doesn't have limits, because it's super annoying to have to constantly override ILL if you've got limits in place. So you don't technically need an ILL patron type policy or patron type, because we're going to use one kind of dummy account for the integration. And we don't need a patron type for one patron account. So the integration works that way. You will need you will need ILL policies for how things kind of generally will. It's just a fail safe, because ILL will technically use the time period that is assigned by the library you're borrowing from. But you will need a policy that says how long you want to lend things out for. So that will be part of that as well. So that will be part of the integration that we'll discuss in a couple weeks. But so yes, if you want to have different notifications than your regular notifications, yes, you will need ILL notifications as well. So if you want them to say different things or have different timing, you will need a separate set. Some people do, some people don't.
Thanks. Because in Sierra now, we have all of our libraries, our borrowing libraries, right, in there as patrons.
Right.
And they have that patron account, and then we have all the loans set up in there.
Sure.
And we wouldn't be doing that.
No. So the way the integration works, and of course we'll deep dive this in 2 weeks, is in order for the lending integration to work, we have one account that takes care of all of those. The system automatically checks it out to that one dummy account for you. It's attached based off of the request ID, so you can refer back to it in the WorldShare ILL application to see it there. So it doesn't check it out to a specific library account that you're lending that book to. It just does it to a generic ILL account, and then is tracked through ILL on who actually has it. But the system does that for you, so you don't have to create anything or do any additional work.
As a follow-up, most of the libraries here probably use 2 interlibrary loan systems, WorldCat and WizCat. For WizCat, would it behoove us to just have a generic interlibrary loan, or do like Chem does and have separate patrons for each of the libraries?
That is up to you how you want to handle it, how like you check things out for WizCat. If it's something that you're not doing through WorldShare ILL, that is an individual institution decision on how you want, because I don't know how you would manage that on your end. I can only instruct you on how we do it through the WorldShare ILL part. But if you want it assigned to a specific library, you can. Because I assume you have to manually check that out to them. So you can use a generic account, that's fine, and add a note, or you can do it to a specific library account. All right. Anything else that we should chat about today? All right, folks. Thanks for your patience last week. I'll get the recording from last week up and the recording for today, get those posted hopefully today or tomorrow, and get the test information loaded for you too, so that you guys can start practicing and have your team members practice.
Thanks, Beth.
You're welcome. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. I'll see you Thursday, guys.
Okay.